2 minutes before I start my conversation to recognize a very dear friend and a good friend of Oromo people. While I do that, here they will set up my slides. So last year I stood on this stage and talked about the need for Oromo media as a way out of the current crisis, because as you all know, the Oromo story has not been told. That remains. At that point, we were off of a conversation that took place on a media that I now work for. At that point, I did not work for Al Jazeera. That conversation took place on Al Jazeera. And it led to so many things, as you know, a lot of great things. Now, as a result of that 30-minute conversation, which was very much, it barely scratched the surface of the Oromo story or the trials of the Oromo people in Ethiopia. But nonetheless, lucky for us, it generated two kinds of reactions. One good from the Oromo, and then the other one obviously negative from the other side. That led to the creation of what is now the Oromo media. There's a person behind all of this. Myself and my friends like Jawar Mohammed have gone around the country and around the world and were recognized as heroes. But the real hero who put that together, who put that show together, who called me one June morning to wake up from sleep and tell Al Jazeera to cover this story is with us today. So I want to ask you all to help me recognize my dear friend and colleague, Reza Zaidi. She's the one who did the show. Please stand up. Stand up. She gave you the Oromo first, she gave you the Oromo Media Network, so that's the person we should all be very grateful for. And just while I'm on that, she also created this banner that I'm using in the background, so I apologize for not seeking your permission for using it, so you copy that. That being said, you can start counting my time now. So, a lot has been said about social media, the importance of it, about Facebook and Twitter. So I will not repeat that. Much has also been said about Oromo protests. How do I do this thing? Okay. So I will not go back. Dr. Mokria, Zakia and others have mentioned Oromo protests in history. I will not go back, but I will just mention that I've been very fortunate to have actually taking part in some of these protests. As a young high school student in the year 2000, I was part of the students that protested against the forest fires in Bale, in Borana. In the year 2001, then only studying college in Oromia, I was part of the students that protested about academic freedom and so on and so forth. In May 2002, I was among the students who were arrested for protesting what was then issue about high price for fertilizers and also low money that students, farmers were getting from their produce. Since I left Oromia from 2003 on, I have seen these protests occur every year. In 2003-2004, when Finfinne was relocated to Adama, similar protests took place. A lot of students were dismissed. And then, of course, the Finchila Dita Gavuma, which all of you guys know, in the most latest one, the 2014 Oromo student protest. I mention all this to say that in all these protests over the years, there are very similar recurring themes. It always ends the same way. First, mass dismissal of Oromo students and mass arrest of Oromo students. Not just ordinary Oromo students, the best and the brightest Oromo students that our nation has ever produced. And when I say that, I think of students like Alamayo Garba, a fellow, a young disabled Oromo student whom I have sat in class with. So those are the kind of people that we lost in this. So the other recurring theme is there is always lack of communication, as Amane talked about. There is just not information coming out of Ethiopia. We don't even hear these protests taking place or how many people are arrested. So when Garoma Wakesa gives you a number of students that are arrested, that's just what we know. There's so much more that we don't know just because there is no information. And then the other thing is there is general lack of media coverage, both within Ethiopia and also abroad. Now, the other obviously issue is that these protests continue to reoccur because the Oromo grievances remain the same. The Oromo voice is not being listened to, the Oromo questions remains unaddressed. But there are some important differences that I would like to note in this year's protest. First, obviously, more people died this year. This is very unfortunate compared to the previous year in just a few days. Obviously, social media was a big player this year. And obviously, there are questions of self-rule and questions coming from within the ruling party itself, from the PDO, that to an extent played a role. Diaspora has been very instrumental in taking the small sound bites, amplifying it and sharing it with a much broader audience. Now, we've said all this, so we say about social media, but I want to give you some numbers so that by the end of my presentation, I hope that those of you who are not on Facebook will sign up, recognizing just how important this tool is. There are about 1.8 billion active global users on Facebook today. Just think about it. According to the ICU, which is a UN organization that studies telecommunication, there are about close to 1 million people in Ethiopia using social media. That is about 1.1% of the total population. According to the Ethio Telecom, there are about 4.6 million internet subscribers in Ethiopia, about 2,363 internet cafes, in about the same, roughly about the same number that the ICU uses, so about 1.7 million Ethiopians on Facebook. The other, probably most important tool that people don't even consider as social media is YouTube. There are about 1 billion plus total users on YouTube. About 80% of that traffic comes from US. 6 billion hours of video is watched on YouTube every month. And the list goes on. And then Twitter, of course. So there are about billion plus users and about 500 million tweets per day. Tweets is 140 character messages that you post on Facebook, but some of you might be asking, what can you say in 140 characters? Because this is an academic audience. So it is based on hashtags. So I say all this, that in the last 10 years, I took part in so many rallies and so many protests that we've done in the diaspora. But all these years, I'll tell you today that we've been looking at the wrong place. So we neglected a big audience. If YouTube in Africa's population put together. So instead of standing in front of White House and holding up banners and hoping that some folks passing by will pay attention, we neglected a much larger audience that is easily accessible and almost free to do. We don't have to drive from Minnesota to Washington, D.C., as I have done in my prime to do that. So you can do it from the comfort of your home. Now, what can you say about 140 characters? These are just some of the examples. When Mohammed Ademo was speaking yesterday, we were posting some sound bites from his presentation. On the other side, if you could read, Ayantuti Besa was talking about the Majatulama. In 140 characters, you can write a book. You can turn your book into a tweet if you just think about it. So there is so much more you can do, but the most, oh my God, I didn't even get started. So the other important tool is blogging. Blogging is sort of fading out as people focus on social media, but this is also a very important medium. About 6.7 million blogs. 77% of the internet users read blogs. You can read the rest. I'm going to zip through this. So, in all of this, for all the great things that came out of the protests this year, there are so many things that we did wrong. Just because we don't pause to study a tool and learn best practices from other organizations, this is not me being critical. I'll show you how it was bad. These are some of. On the other side, you will see some of the best practices. Always use one hashtag. Make it short, be consistent, be informative. Just don't post photos from Osa. Say, tell us what is happening on this panel, not just that Mohammed Ademo is speaking on the stage. That doesn't say much. So, some of the examples, we'll be using OSA 2014. OSA 2014 itself is a story. So if you know about OSA 2014, the conference is, it's very simple. MTA 50, Majat Ulama Association at 50. So be creative, short, precise. But this is what we did for the Oromo protest. For one protest, there were about 6 hashtags. As a journalist with a deadline sitting at a desk, which one am I going to follow to tell you a story? It's very confusing. Which one is about Oromo, which one is about something else? Say no to Addis expansion, say no to land grab, Oromo protests, Oromo students, Finfinne for Oromo. One would have been just enough. So when my friend Reza was doing the story about the protest, I had to explain to her all these were about Oromo so that she could pick the most important sound bites from this. So it's very important we know how to use tools. And this is just one example of where I've seen some misuse of that. And then the other thing is on Facebook. Look at this. I wish I can. If you look on the other side, there are about 4 groups dedicated to the protest. The first one has about 1,000 members. The second one has about 7,500 members. The other one, you can look at the numbers. But why did we need all these groups? Can one be enough? And then we all organize, get into one of them in now we actually have the same thing on this side. The same thing on this side. So there are 3 groups, just as an example. This has about 53,000 members. This about 30. Why do we need this? If all the 30,000 people here and the 50,000 people here are in one group, we have a force that is 80,000 strong. So organizing is not just at OSA or on the street. You can also organize online, be more effective if we knew the impact of it and how you have to use these tools. So I'm just going to run through this. So what was the coverage of the Oromo protest like? On the Oromo side, much was poorly reported. I'm guilty. Lack of creativity. Just saying that protests happened is not enough. Saying that people were dead is not enough. We have to learn how to tell the Oromo story, and we can. And then obviously there are lack of issues with lack of professionalism in the way that it's presented, because when journalists who are non-Oromo look at this, you want them to take you serious. If it is not quality, if it is not professionally done, people are just going to move on to the next thing, because guess what? Ukraine is blowing up, Venezuela is blowing up, Gaza is blowing up. There are so many much more pressing human rights issues going around. You have to make your story compelling to get people's attention. That was the case in our case. So I've also seen people using all the images from 2005, from the Muslim protests as this. This creates an issue because you are misrepresenting the voice of the students and you're not telling the story of what is happening now. And in an effort to be to stand in solidarity with them, you do that. On the other side, on the mainstream media side, I think compared to previous years, things were better. Having allies like our friend at Al Jazeera, in a few early analyses that we've published, were very effective, because when a journalist comes to me and say, what should I read as a background for the Oromo protest? We have to have a well-done, reported, factual analysis out there. We have so many doctors in this room who could have done a lot more, but that's a whole different issue I don't have time for. Now, on Oromo media, the same problems I talked about last year remains. We still dance to our own music. Oromos are still doing media for the Oromo. That's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to get us anywhere. We have to get out of that. We focus so much on this idea that you bring experts and just talk for 30, 40 minutes about an issue. We have to be creative, package it and present it in a compelling way, interesting way, so that I actually can sit for 30 minutes and listen, not just somebody talking about an issue that is very much obvious. The operation of Oromo is not new. We don't need to keep repeating that. We have to get better. Dr. Benya mentioned this morning about lack of coverage in other areas, for example, health. Look at every media organization that is run by Oromos. Everything that you get, including our pride, I'm guilty as charged. Everything that we do is politics. This is not going to work. We have to focus on health, daily living, art, and other things. As I said last year, being Oromo is much more than just doing politics. I think Dr. Gudata was very clear and precise today when he talked about being a humanitarian. We don't all have to do the same thing. If you're a journalist, do journalism. If you are an engineer, do engineering. So there's a room for everybody. Again, as I said last year, continued fragmentation. I don't understand why we have to keep opening websites and radios. There are so many websites and radios and TVs. Build one, make it strong. That's the only way we can get ahead. Of course, there are very technical reasons also for websites. I see websites almost every month. Just one more minute. I see a new website every month. They all do the same thing. They post the full article from another website on their blog. And that creates an issue. When Google comes to my website and indexes the story, for the first time, it actually appears on top of Google search for Ethiopia. When the next person copies the same story and puts it on another blog, Google say, oh wait, whose story is this? So Google automatically drops that. So just by using the same text and the same title to repost for no other reason, when you can just send the traffic to the original website, you create an issue where the Oromo story will fall from the top. Unfortunately, I can't get through all the details. Again, I've said this so many times before at Osa, Oromo elites need to start writing more and more. People, there are great books out there by Oromo scholars, but when the news breaks, when students are dying in Oromia, people want to understand, they're not going to go find Dr. Mokria's book and read. There's just no time for it. Journalism runs fast. I'm slow today, but that doesn't mean that. And most of all, I would just say this in close. We really need to understand the power of social media networks. There's a reason why it's called network. It works by networking. I have 2,000 members. Ayantu Tibeso has friends. Ayantu Tibeso has 2,000 friends. Not all are the same. So if Ayantu reshares the story that I posted, I already reached 2,000 people. She also reached another 2,000 people. The chain goes on and on. How many of you guys are here? We probably can come up with about 20, 30,000 people in this room if we add our members on Facebook. Unless you share my story, the story that I posted, your friends won't be able to see it unless we have common friends. So we have to understand there is so much power in a click. In just a click, all you really need to do is click, share, and then you share it with your audience. So we really need to learn to use those things. I'll skip this, and if you want to connect and talk about this more, obviously I didn't have time. This is my information. Thank you very much.